Okay, sure. All right. Hey, everybody, it's Pete from GenWell, Canada's human connection movement, where we've been generating wellness through the power of human connection since 2016, working to educate, empower, and catalyze Canadians around the importance of face to face social connection as a proactive step that we can all take for health, happiness, longevity, and for the betterment of society. I'm here today with Gillian Sandstrom, one of the global leading researchers in the space of talking to strangers. Who would have thought
Who
that
knew you could
somebody
do
could
that for
make
a living? Exactly.
exactly? And now, Gillian, funny enough, I believe that what you're researching and what you have been researching for some time may be one of the most important pieces of insight that the world needs to hear. And that's exactly why we're here today, Jillian. So, Jillian, you and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other for a few years. We recently even had a chance to connect face to face, which really reinforced how important it is and how great it feels when we connect face to face. But Jillian, how about we start off? Why don't you tell us who you are? The I know you teach at Sussex, but maybe tell us a little more about who Gillian Sandstrom is.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm an associate professor in the psychology of kindness, which is a pretty great job title, at the University of Sussex in England. And I started my journey doing a master's degree at what used to be Ryerson, now Toronto Metropolitan University. Then I moved to UBC for my PhD. And then, life just throws you things, and so I caught a ball that took me to England, and I've been here for a dozen years now. Um, yeah.
That's amazing, Julian. And honestly, I love the fact that, you are Canada's own Gillian Sandstrom. And although you're working overseas now, you still have a major connection back here. I will say for those that are watching, Gillian has been a big proponent of what we've been doing at GenWell and specifically around Talk to a Stranger Week. A lot of the insights that we speak about during the campaign and in all of our workshops across this country, a lot of it relates back to the work that Gillian has been doing. So we are always grateful to be promoting you, promoting your work. And what I remember us having an early conversation was as a researcher, knowing that your insights were being put to good use in society through, whether it's a campaign or it's educating people is really important to you. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it feels there's plenty of good basic research. We don't always know where research is going to lead. But for me, it feels like there'd be no point in doing this work if there was no one using it. And so I'm just so delighted to sort of have come across you and partnered with GenWell and to see you making use of the things that I've found in my research.
Awesome. Yeah, we are. I think it's a mutual admiration society, to be honest with you, Jillian. We talk about you all the time over here. All right,
Aw.
so I know you have some unique stories about what got you into doing this research. Maybe you can
Mhm.
tell us about one of those stories and how Gillian Sandstrom got so. I like to use the word addicted now because I know we often think of that as a negative, but I think in this case, the idea of being addicted to talking to strangers, once we understand the why behind it, what was your, initial reason to get into this?
Yeah, I guess I kind of am addicted. I had someone once tell me, a creative type told me that I have a practice of talking to strangers. I thought that had a nice ring to it.
That's really
Um,
nice.
but yeah, I mean, there's never just one story. So I grew up with a dad who talks to everybody. But I thought, that wasn't for me because I'm an introvert. I was shy. I was scared of other people. So I saw him do it and saw how much he enjoyed it, but I didn't ever think that it would be for me. And then one sort of turning point for me, I was on the subway in Toronto one day, and there was this woman, and she was sitting there with this cupcake, like it was in this beautiful, clear package, and it was just this beautifully decorated cupcake. And that's the first time I remember sort of deliberately choosing to talk to a stranger. Of course, I talked to people before if they talked to me or if there was a reason for it, but that, like, I didn't have to talk to this woman, but I felt like I needed to know where she got this cupcake. So I started chatting with her, and by the end of our conversation, she had taught me that people can ride ostriches. Um, and I mean, I didn't need to know that, but it was delightful. And so it was this moment where I just thought, maybe people aren't so scary. Like maybe there's something to learn from talking to people. Maybe it could give you a new perspective or provide a feeling of connection or just a feeling of like just fun. And so I was kind of hooked from that point on. I started experimenting and talking to people more and more often.
Yeah, I think it's so funny as I think, based on your research, and that's where I'd love to go next. I think part of this whole thing is the consciousness, right? Like, because I think
Mm.
many people have these positive experiences, but maybe we just forget it, or we don't think about it that, oh my God, that actually added value to my life, and that maybe I would want to consider doing that more often. Isn't that,
Yeah, I
it's
think
kind of
there's a couple
interesting.
things. I think we don't do it often enough because there's so many ways that we don't have to talk to strangers a lot anymore, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I remember growing up, you had to call the bank or you had to go to the bank. When's the last time I went to a bank? I don't even know. Like there's so many more things we can do online or so I think there's fewer and fewer opportunities to do it. And so we're just out of practice. We don't do it very often. And so then I think we don't notice a pattern. It's easy to think, oh, well, just because I met, some guy named Pete and had a nice conversation with him, why would I expect the same thing to happen if I talk to, Manjeet? Because different people. So we give away all the credit. It's a funny thing. Like we kind of think if our conversation went well, it must be because of them. And we forget that we play a role too. So I think, and what I found in this one research study I did, when people did it regularly, but people talk to a stranger every day for a week, it's hard to ignore the fact that there is a pattern and that these conversations generally go well. It's not just an exception. It's not just a fluke. So I think that that's part of it.
And you know what I love about that is that ultimately that's part of the reason why we chose a week over a day, because
Mm,
it actually, I think your research, if you remind me what the stat was, is that if you, well, I think it was just about improvement. If you do it for a week,
mm.
you become more confident, and if you do it for a week, you're more likely to maintain that habit after the week is over. Am I right in that piece?
Absolutely right. Yeah. So
Right.
when we had people practice, they were by the end of the week, sort of day by day, gradually, we're a little less worried about being rejected. And yeah, like you said, feel more confident. And we had some signs that people might have initiated more conversations after the week ended.
It's so industry. Maybe we can jump into some of the other insights that you would pull out of all the work that you've done. And then I actually even would love to dive into a little bit of because you've told me, I think, in times, Jillian, even some things that you can't even get people to be mean to people. I think you were setting up a study in a park and you couldn't even get somebody to treat the person sitting on the bench in a negative way. Maybe you can tell us some of the biggest insights that you what the research says, but I think maybe more importantly, what does Gillian Sandstrom take from some of the research that you've done where you're like, it's the big aha moment where we have to actually say, this is what we need people to understand, because if you did understand this, you'd probably look at the opportunity to talk to strangers a little more positively.
I think I'm going to cheat a little bit and talk about a sort of a meta takeaway, like a bigger picture takeaway, which is just, and it's top of mind because I was teaching in my class yesterday. I teach a class called Social Connection and Disconnection. So it's all about loneliness and social connection.
I didn't
And,
know
and,
that, Julian.
and,
That's news.
and the big takeaway, I mean, I get students to provide feedback after each lecture. So I get them to fill out this little slip of paper and tell me sort of what they learned that day. And one student, I think, summed it up really well, which was just, we are our worst enemy. So the takeaway is just that we get in our heads and we seem to sort of uniquely do this in terms of social stuff. So psychologists, we know that generally speaking, people think they're better than average. We think we're a better driver than most other people. We're more honest than most other people. Like it shows up across like everything you can think of. But it doesn't show up when it comes to talking to a new person or having a chat with someone at a social gathering. It seems to be an exception, and almost the only exception. The only other exception was playing a new sport. But every other thing that researchers studied, we think we're worse than average. So we just think we're so bad at this, and we're not. So people like us more than we think. All these things that we worry about when we think about talking to a stranger, across study after study that I've run, they none of these things happen. And your conversation tends to go not just a little bit, but a lot better than you expect. And then Nick Epley, who we've talked to before, he finds the same pattern. We underestimate how much someone's going to appreciate us thanking them. We underestimate how much people appreciate an act of kindness. So we just don't see how good we already are and how much it means to other people when we reach out and connect and do these small little moments of human connection and kindness.
My question then, Jillian, is, well, I guess how did we get here? And then how do we overcome, how do we get people to actually, I guess, the action I want is for people to talk to a stranger. That's why we ran the entire campaign. But how do we help people get over this? How do we get out of our own heads and start getting people to say, well, geez, now that I understand how good it is, maybe this is part of my solution.
I wish I knew the answer. Um, I'm hoping that just hearing about this research and realizing that, you're not alone and it is scary and most people are scared about this and we're all sort of underestimating our ability and how much it means to other people. Maybe that helps a little bit. I also hope just telling people how much it means to others. Sometimes it's hard to do something for yourself, but if you know
Yeah,
that you're able to do something for someone else, you can sort of push yourself a little bit further.
yeah.
I know sometimes that's what I do to trick myself into doing things. It's like, oh, it's not for me, it's for them. Um, I hope that that kind of thing happens. And then, talk to a stranger week is just it's giving people permission. It's trying to set the norm and show people that like if we all did this, like people want to do it more than they do. And so if you give people permission and they start to really enjoy it and see all the benefits that I'm convinced that they will, hopefully it makes people want to do it more often. And if enough of us do it, little things make a big difference. So
It's so funny you say that, Jillian, because the I don't know if it's an analogy or the story I tell, which is, look, we do this thing called Halloween. Yet, if I said to you today, I have this concept where one day a year that you and I will put on costumes and we'll knock on people's doors that we don't know and we'll take candy from strangers, people would honestly think we were crazy with that idea.
it's true. Yeah.
But we agreed, as far as I can read back, it's about 60 years ago that we agreed to do this thing called Halloween because it was an opportunity for us to come out of our homes, have some fun, smile, see kids. Kids always make people laugh. You get people to wear their costumes. Everybody gets permission because they do it
Mm,
all in the same day. But I don't
yeah.
see anybody wear costumes the other 365 days of the year, other than you're going to the Comic-Con conference or something. And I think this is the power of Talk to a Stranger Week, is as you point out, which is by having everybody, 41 million Canadians. And to be honest with you, I know that this is being used around the world in different countries to inspire people to think more consciously and intentionally around the importance of human connection, whether it's these small micro moments or whether it's deeper meaningful connections. But I think sometimes we just need to recognize, if we all do it together, it gives people, those who might be on the brink of trying it but are a little afraid to do it. Maybe we can get another 1% or 5% of the population to think about doing it, because we give them permission for 1 week of the year. And if they try it for a week, as we know from your research, hopefully by the end of it, they go, hey, that wasn't so bad after all. I guess I could do that all year long, not just wait for Talk to a Stranger Week.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I've always thought that like if an alien came down to this planet and sort of looked at our behavior, they'd be very confused by, like you said, Halloween or I live in the UK and people told me when the Olympics happened in London, all the rules changed. People were talking to each other on transit all the time, but as soon as the Olympics were over, it's back to normal. But we have different rules for different contexts. If someone has a dog, it's perfectly fine to go up and talk to them and talk to their dog. But like, why do we have all these funny little nuanced rules? And I actually started wondering if maybe we didn't make the rules. Maybe the rules come from like, we think it's going to be difficult and we're not sure it'll go well in this situation. So we kind of invent a rule that we don't do it then. But the rule, like we make the rule to say it's okay to do the things that are more like we say talking to people with a dog is okay because we know that it's more likely to work. Like maybe there's a reverse situation happening there. Like maybe if we were, um, you know, I'm not being very coherent now.
It's interesting because it's so funny because I jokingly was going to say the reason we feel it's okay to talk to dogs is because we know that they'll have a positive response to us, whereas the
A
fear,
positive response?
yeah, the fear that you pause,
Yeah.
but the fear, the internal dialogue. Again, humans may not respond the way I want them to, and
Yeah.
therefore, but that's all us inside our own
But I
heads.
think the
So
fear might drive the rule rather than the rule driving the fear, or both might be
yeah,
happening, is what I'm
yeah.
trying to say, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I love it.
There.
Hey, so tell me, Jillian, so in your research, I know a big part of what you've really shared with the world is what are the benefits? So we have these little micro moments of connection. We say hello to the barista. We say hello to somebody at the dog park. We say hello to a colleague when we walk into the office. My colleague Angela just walked in. She waved at me because
Hi,
she didn't want to
Angela.
disrupt this. Um, and so, can you tell us a little more about all the benefits that happen when we talk to strangers?
Yeah, and we're still learning. So the first benefits that I found and Nick found in his research also with Juliana Schroeder was that it's just fun. Like it puts you in a good mood. And that's what I noticed when I started doing it, aside from the lady who taught me about ostriches, I would always chat to the woman who worked at Ryerson University who was selling hot dogs. Every time I pass her, I'd smile and wave, and she'd smile and wave, and I realized that I had a bounce in my step afterwards, that I just felt good, and I
Mm,
think it made me feel that I belonged there. It made me feel sort of connected and grounded and like part of the community. Um, in a way that seemed completely out of proportion with the size of, what we were actually doing. It's just a smile, just a wave. It's this tiny thing, but it really meant a lot to me. So that sense of connection, positive mood. Um, Nick and his colleague Stav Atir, they've found that we just learn so much. I mean, as evidenced by my learning about ostriches. But you get advice and recommendations. When I moved to Brighton, which is where I live now, as soon as people found out that I was new, I mean, they went out of their way to recommend their favorite restaurant, or you need to check out this event, or, people love to share their favorite stuff. So yeah, lots of informational benefits. And I'm doing some work right now with a postdoc named Taylor West, and we're trying to look at societal benefits. And so we're starting to see this is just preliminary, evidence at the moment, but we're finding that, you get a strangers are different than you. We our close others are very similar to us, right? We share values and preferences and all that kind of stuff. So that's partly why we learn more when we talk to strangers, because strangers are different. We don't necessarily have so much in common with them. But that also means that it helps us get a different perspective. And it helps us build intellectual humility, openness to other perspectives.
I love the term intellectual humility. I think in a world where we've created such political polarization and a
Mm.
lot of people who believe my way is the only way, a little intellectual humility may not be such a bad thing. I know the other research, and again, apologize. I don't know if this is you or Nick, but it tends to be one of you. Excuse me, I'm battling a cough. Um, but it's increases optimism, trust, sense of safety, security, inclusion, belonging. You just mentioned community, connected, that we learn, that we can have a laugh, that we can have fun. and that we always say as part of the campaign, a stranger today could be a friend tomorrow. They might introduce us to a new community or to a new activity. And I
Mm.
really believe that, in Canada, our research shows it's only 20% of Canadians that talk to strangers every day. 43% talk to strangers a few times a week. And I always say, look, if you already do it, maybe you can do it a little bit more. And if you don't do it at all, maybe I can get you to do it for the first time because you now understand the research. And the other piece, which I think is your research, which is, actually, it's, I think your research in the UK suggests it's 93% of the time that both parties are happy that a connection happened with a stranger. And I think Nick's research in the US shows it's 97% of the time that when we talk to a stranger, both parties are happy that it happened. So, aside from the benefits, knowing that it's usually a positive experience,
Mm.
hopefully we can inspire people 1 week of the year to give it a shot because they know that people are a little more aware. I will tell you that we've got some exciting news that the CBC has become our national media partner for Talk to a
Cool.
Stranger Week. So now we're at that scale of populational level awareness where I believe your insight is right, which is, hey, if I can give everybody permission to try it, maybe we can get more people to give it a go and recognize it's not so scary after all.
Living the dream.
Yeah. So, hey, so obviously the movement, we do 6 campaigns throughout the year, and all of this is leading to what we now use the phrase social health. How important, when it comes to how we build connection with each other, why is this so important to us, Jillian?
I mean, you're asking me these questions. I know you know the answers. I
You're
mean,
the expert.
the research suggests that we've all read the headlines about how loneliness is as deadly to as 15 cigarettes, smoking 15 cigarettes. I
Yeah,
think, researchers are still trying to figure out exactly like why, how can that be true? How
yeah, yeah.
how can loneliness get under our skin and affect us physiologically, right? Because I grew up thinking loneliness was a feeling, right? And I think what the research is telling us is like, no, it's way more than that. It's, when you're socially isolated, um, you start to see everything different. Everything seems more threatening, and then you have so much more stress in your body, and you don't have the people to help you regulate that stress. And then it becomes a chronic thing, and then you have all these negative health outcomes over the years. Um, and I think I'm going to kind of go a little bit aside from the question you asked, but um, I've been playing with a visualization in my head. I don't know if you've ever heard there's this idea about like just getting things done, and you have a little vase or something, and the really important things, you have the big rocks, right? So you put those in your in your
Yes.
in your jar, right?
Yeah.
And there's only so many big rocks that fill in the jar, but once you've got them all in there, there's
And
also
the small
room for the
rocks,
smaller ones, and then there's also room for the
some
sand, right?
sand.
And I think the same is true for social connection, right? I think,
Mm.
our close relationships obviously matter, and we need to protect those and nurture those. And we can't be complacent about them. Like, they need work and effort and all that, and they're incredibly important. But then there's still room to have weak ties, acquaintances. They're talking to the neighbor, talking to the colleague, even if you're never gonna, you know, share your deepest, darkest secrets or invite them over for dinner. Like, they still matter. And then I think strangers are the sand. Like, we can have endless sand, so much sand. I think, strangers provide benefits as well, and sometimes different ones. Like, each of those different kinds of connections offer different things. And so it's important to have that variety and diversity of connections as well.
Honestly, Jillian, I don't think you could have used a better analogy for, the role that strangers can play. And the other thing we always talk about at GenWell when we're doing our social health workshops is really helping people understand that, if you have all these, we call them the quadrants: family, friends, neighbors,
Mm.
classmates, or colleagues. And then you've got strangers kind of encompassing those 4 quadrants. the
Mm,
reality is, we're all going to go through periods of time. Maybe we lose a job, or maybe we fight with a family member, or
yes.
we scrap with a neighbor, and all of a sudden that quadrant of the balance of our relationships is empty because we
Yeah.
we lose it. Well, those strangers may be a real value to us at that time, and so always thinking about. I do believe that all of us, many of us, lean into family and friends because that's traditionally where we've got our deeper relationships from. But I think recognizing, as you say, all these places that we can get connection from, and that many of them are around us every day. But if you weren't conscious of the value of them and the opportunity that lies within them, that maybe we weren't taking advantage of them. And that's really, that's what the whole movement is about. But more specifically, to talk to a stranger week, it's really about saying, hey, these these ones might be here, around you every day, but you may not be taking advantage of them.
And I don't want people to think I'm saying you need to talk to everyone everywhere all the time. That's not what this is about, right? It's just the idea that there are people around and there are opportunities to connect and have a laugh and learn something new and just it's just an element of novelty in your life to have a sort of I think that's partly what makes it scary is you don't know what's going to happen in these conversations. Probably nothing scary. I don't mean that, but like you don't know what to expect, and that's a bit scary, but also just really fun. Like it's such a source of novelty in our life.
It is funny because now, because I don't even think about this very often, but I have never actually thought, or had a negative experience in talking to a stranger. And you told me once that the worst that you tend to get in your research is that somebody doesn't respond. Not that it's a negative response, but
Mm,
that they just have no response, and that maybe some people are interpreting that no response as a negative, when in actual
mm,
fact, we just need to understand that people have things going on in their life. Maybe they just had a scrap with their family, or maybe they've got a meeting that they're preparing to. And so I think it's even understanding how we should interpret how people respond to us, and what does it
mm.
really mean.
Yeah, I've been doing some work on rejection and what it looks like and how we interpret it and how we feel about it. And I can't really share any results yet, but I will tell you that we're finding that people aren't always clear on whether they're being rejected. Like it's not always very obvious because my gut feeling is that what a rejection looks like in practice is just someone politely responding to you and then, maybe they're not comfortable, whatever, but plugging in their headphones or pulling out their phone or whatever. But people don't generally just completely ignore you and they don't say horrible things to you. Like that almost never happens. I've never had that happen.
Mm.
The only sort of negative interaction I've had is sometimes, I think people don't have enough people who are willing to talk to them and listen to them. So sometimes, you talk to a stranger and they just start going off about their horrible day or their horrible boss or whatever. And, it's not very fun and interesting to sit there and listen to them for an extended period of time. But also, maybe I'm doing something nice. Maybe they need someone to talk to. And if that's the price I need to pay for all the amazing, wonderful conversations, I'm happy to do it.
You inspire me, Gillian Sandstrom. I couldn't agree with you more. When we think about this as maybe a purpose in somebody's life, to recognize that if you
Mm,
talk to 10 strangers today, if three of them are about what you're doing for somebody else versus what's happening for you, although you and I would know, I call this the dirty little secret, is that every time you talk to a stranger, you feel happier as well as them. So, yeah, I think it's a really great comment. Hey, you mentioned something there that I'd love to touch on with you, which is, and you're wearing your headphones today, but it's because you're in a house and trying to, keep the noise down as we have this
mm,
conversation. The role of earbuds and headphones and all the other things. I can tell you that we went out on the streets of Toronto last year, and tried to do some talking to strangers, and this was in downtown Toronto. And I will tell you that it was probably 75% of the people had earbuds or headphones in.
mm.
How big of a barrier is that? Well, I'll tell you our experience. Nobody who had headphones on or earbuds in wanted to talk. But I will say it was over 50% of the people who didn't that wanted to have were open to a conversation. So, Jillian, I guess what's your insight there, but what's your advice to people?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think you're right that a lot of people, I think people sometimes deliberately wear earbuds because they want to signal that they don't want anyone to talk to them. Um, and we need to respect people. I mean, that's something else. I mean, we're trying to encourage people to talk to strangers during this week and more generally, but don't be a nuisance. If people don't want to talk, don't push it. But acknowledge too that people are going to feel a bit uncomfortable and confused by it, and you might have to keep going long enough that they realize you're just being friendly. So you have to find that right balance between
I
like
agree.
persist for a little bit if it seems okay to do so, but then at some point you have to just let people be if they don't want to talk. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've talked to people with earbuds in. Often it's because I haven't noticed that they had earbuds in, and people will, stop whatever the thing and talk to you. And I mean, I'll admit when I go out for my daily walks, I have my earbuds in, but I'm constantly stopping my music so that I can go up to people and say hello. So I don't think it necessarily has to be a barrier, but you're
Yeah.
definitely sending a signal when you have them in that you're not as open to other people approaching you.
And I think part of it stems from the fact if we all understood how valuable it was to our health, our happiness, longevity, society, the impact of purpose on what you could do for somebody else. I wonder if people might be a little more open to maybe not walking around with the earbuds or the headphones on all the time.
Maybe, but I think as an introvert, I get that you want to shut things out because it's a little too much sometimes, you know? You
Yeah.
want to have the calming music or whatever it is to help you sort of just be able to tune into one thing rather than the whole chaos that's around you. So I get
I have
that.
a buddy. He actually works with us at GenWell. His name is Reagan Zuzarte, and Reagan is maybe one of the smartest human beings I know. But when I first met Reagan, he would never have he would literally be working in his office, and as soon as he would stand up and walk away from his desk, he'd have a podcast on. He is constantly consuming information.
Mm,
He is honestly, he's a brilliant human being, and at the same time, I was sad. I don't know if sad is the right word, but I was like, Reagan, I would like to talk to you. But every time I see you, you've got your headphones on and you're in another world listening to a podcast. And I guess, Jillian, I guess the thing is you got to just find the balance. Put the pods on when you want to listen to a podcast, but make sure that you're also don't give off the message that you don't have any interest in connecting with human beings
mm,
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because as we know from the research, it's not good for us. And I think that's the
mm.
wake up call.
I think, yeah, I think we could all stand to just have less stimulation at times, you know? I think we need to have those moments of quiet where we're just sort of looking at the world and noticing rather than being stuck in our heads and trying to achieve something.
Yeah. Hey, as a and I shouldn't say devoted, as a proclaimed introvert, I wanted to
Mm.
touch on that as well, which
Mm.
is we know from the research that introverts need human connection as much as extroverts do. They may not need it as often,
And enjoy
and
social interactions just as much.
totally.
Yeah.
So, how great of an opportunity is talking to strangers where there is no deep connection to the individual? How great of an opportunity is talking to strangers for introverts?
I actually think for myself that I sometimes use it as a coping mechanism. So if I'm
Mm,
on the tube in London and, it's like any mass transportation system, it's loud, it's hot. It doesn't matter if it's summer or winter, it's overheated in there. There's a lot of people, a lot of noise, a lot of smells, like all the things, right? Um, I actually find it helps me so much if I just turn to the person sitting next to me and have a little chat because it means that I can tune out everything else. Like I can just get absorbed in that conversation. And I find it, for me, it helps me a lot to just cope with all the things. And yeah, like you said, there's an element of you get to take charge. You get to choose who you're talking to. Usually, you do it in a situation where you can just walk away, or there's like a limited time, right? And so and then you're never going to see them again. So, like that element of judgment and stuff is just not there. I mean, some of us will still play it over and over again in our heads. Um, but, yeah, you're never going to see them again. So you can let it go. You can just, you know, learn from it. Um, and let it help you kind of develop your social skills. But I think that's another benefit actually that we haven't documented yet. But I think
Yeah.
if you practice talking to strangers and you get more comfortable, it translates to
Yeah.
feeling
It's a
like you
stepping
can,
stone.
it translates to you feeling like you can speak up in a meeting at work and ask a question or ask someone for help or, you know, do something kind, like give someone a compliment or, all these other things, just feeling a bit more confident in your social skills, I think really kind of ripples out.
Yeah, I think it's a really great comment. I really do. And I don't know when I started the movement back in 2016, I certainly had considered and had people talk about the role of talking to strangers, but I was focused on, the four quadrants, friends, family, neighbors,
Mm,
classmates, and colleagues, because I thought they were the ones that were going to give those lifelong support
mm,
pillars in our lives. But, it was your research, Gillian, that inspired me to go, geez, maybe we're missing something here. Maybe we're missing maybe the big, and I do believe now it may be the biggest opportunity that we have in society to not only heal ourselves, but maybe to heal the society in which we live.
mm,
Because if we all saw each other more as human beings that have far more in common than what differentiates us, I think we would actually build more bridges with people that look like us and don't look like us, think like us and don't think like us, act like us and don't, because it's not about, because you don't think or act like me that you're the enemy. It's, hey, that's interesting that you think that way. I think this way. And, let's
mm.
have a conversation while we're on the subway or we're on the bus or whatever that case may be. But we have to be open to the fact that, hey, there's a lot of people in this world and we all are going to be far better off if we can, build these little connections and these little interactions that make us all feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah. I think like this goes back to you asking me about sort of what's the big finding, the big takeaway for me.
Yeah.
I think the common denominator is fear. And I think, we, for some reason that maybe doesn't even make a lot of sense, I think a lot of us walk around a little bit scared of other people and suspicious and there's some reason, like there's some reason that makes sense, but like we're really way too fearful. And I think if you know, for myself anyway, I walked around exactly like that. I would look people in the eye and then I would drop my eyes to the ground because I was too scared to even just maintain eye contact with people. But having talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of strangers now, I'm just not scared of people anymore. And I mean, there are some horrible people in the world, but they are the minority. Like most people are just everyday people like you and me trying to make their way through the world, deal with whatever life throws them, we're all dealing with stuff. And I'm just not scared of people anymore. And that is, like you said, that feels like the bottom, like the bottom, the foundation. If we can get that, then everything else can build on that. But if you
Yeah.
can't get rid of that piece, then everything else falls apart.
And I
If we're
and
scared of
not
each
just
other, we can't work together. We can't, yeah. And that's when our
and
society
not
falls
just
apart.
and not just the I think you used the word the vast majority. I would say like almost the vast majority. It's like a very small
Yeah, there's not even a
micro.
word for it, is there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
when we think of who really are the people that we should use the word even fear, they probably aren't among us most times. As mom used to say to me, what can you do after what can't you do after midnight that you can't do before midnight? It's like the people that are probably the people to fear are the people that are out, late at night doing things they probably shouldn't be doing, but they're probably not riding the subway with you. They probably aren't in your offices. They probably aren't in the places that we are each and every day. So I think that is some really, really great advice. Um, okay, so
Like you
Jillian,
said,
I
though, I
think
mean,
we're
that's a question that's going to be on people's mind is like, is it safe for me to talk to strangers? And I mean, again, I mean, I know you're clear about this on your in your materials and things. We're not saying that you should, walk down a dark alley or be out after midnight talking to people. There's plenty of public spaces with lots of other people around. Do it in a place where you feel comfortable. Do it with a friend. Do whatever you need to do. There's lots of things you can do to make it feel more comfortable. But
Can I get
there's
you to hey, can you your camera just went blurry. You're blurry on
Oh,
the screen.
I can
I
fix
want you to
that.
answer that
Sorry.
question again. And we will there you are, you're
Better?
back. So,
S-
so what about, the fear that people have about talking to strangers and all the things that we've told people, like, if you're a kid or whether you're a female that feels unsafe, when shouldn't we talk or how should we talk about this, Jillian?
Yeah, and I mean, I know you've been, and that's a very reasonable concern that I know a lot of people will have. And I know you've been really clear in all your materials. We're not saying to go walk down a dark alley and chat up the person hiding in the shadows. Do it but there's plenty of opportunities to do it in public spaces with lots of other people around, daylight. Do it somewhere where you feel safe, and there's plenty of opportunities to do that, whether it's when you're buying your coffee or walking your dog or going to the gym or whatever. There's lots of opportunities where it can feel completely safe.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, Julian, I think we're near the end of our chat today. I just want to say a huge thank you to you. You've inspired me since we first met a few years ago. This movement is, it's a tribute really to the work that you've been doing, the work that Nick Epley has been doing in the U.S. The two of you have both inspired me to keep pushing forward with this. You know, we have the CDC, we've got support of government. We have over 20 cities that have proclaimed Talk to a Stranger Week in Canada. The Ontario legislature is going to proclaim that Talk to a Stranger Week in Ontario. We will be read out in
Amazing.
Parliament this year. So many amazing things are happening, but it wouldn't have happened without some early conversations about the research that you've been doing. So, Gillian, I want to say thank you to you. I also want everybody to recognize that when we met in the UK, that it was a very funny thing to watch you walk through a park. And there wasn't a person that you didn't connect with as we walked through that park that day, which I think was St. James Park. Am I right that it was St.
That's
James
right.
Park?
Yeah.
And I can still remember, I went to the washroom and I came and you were in a full out deep conversation with an older lady. And it was like, oh my God, you are as crazy as I am. You are living your research. You are living what you do. And I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all the support of GenWell and Talk to a Stranger Week. And thank you again for making the time to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much for making use of this research and believing in the potential of it. And I hope that people give it a try and find it to be just as fun and rewarding and meaningful as I do.
Yeah. All right, Jillian, thank you, my friend. Have a beautiful
Okay.
day. Actually, I'm just gonna say that and then I'm gonna turn off the recording. Are you sure you want to stop recording?